the meeting to order. And I'd like to begin by reading the Open Public Meetings Act. I hereby announce and request that such be included in the minutes of this meeting, that notice of the time, place, and date of the meeting has been prominently posted on the bulletin board at Borough Hall, mailed to the Hawk, formerly the Times, the Star Ledger, the Courier News, the Patch, and the Alternative Press, filed with the Borough Clerk and mailed to any person requesting same in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act. And can we have a roll call, Colleen?
Yes, Regina Brown, John Hanna, present. Okay. Tom Krantz,
Sorry, I'm mute.
Margaret Lewis,
Here.
Michael Lewis,
Here.
Jan Siegel,
Here.
Kathleen Thomas,
Here.
John Achi,
Here.
Tanisha McGriff,
Here.
and Francine Glazer. Okay, we do have a quorum, Margaret.
Okay, I'd like to start out by saying that we called this special meeting tonight to update the members of the board on what has occurred since we last met regarding
Hello.
Sheelan's fish.
Hi, Margaret.
Yeah,
Oh,
hi,
Still in here, nothing.
Hi, Regina.
we can hear you. We can hear you, Regina.
Yeah.
You on okay? So I thought we would begin by asking Russ and Megan to update the board members on the matters related to Sheelan's Fish Market. And then afterwards, the board members can certainly ask questions of Megan and also of Russell and also of the owners of Sheelan's Fish Market. You want to start, Russ?
Well, I thought somebody was going to make a motion to go into executive to discuss matters pertaining to anticipated litigation.
I thought we were going to just update the members on what had happened up until
First.
now, right?
Right, that was the plan. We're doing that.
That
first,
was
and
the
then
plan.
Yeah,
Okay.
after the
All right.
questions are answered, we'll move to executive.
Oh, okay. All right. I see. Okay. So just to start out, I've been working very closely with Megan Avalon concerning Sheelan's, initially Sheelan's Fish Market. As you know, the board, you guys have been dealing with inspections related to Sheelan's Fish Market. There's been a history going back to February of this year, with some inspections, some failed inspections. I believe there were 3 consecutive, one in February, one in March, one in April, and there might have been another one in June, but Megan can correct me on that one, and she could feel free to jump in and correct me anytime I get one of the facts wrong or inaccurate. At any rate, the June failed. There was a previous either late May or early inspection that Sheelan's Fish Market did not pass. And at that time, I think the board was going to take action at one of its hearings. They invited the owners of the fish market to come at a hearing. And I think it was determined then that they were going to take action on the license pertaining to the fish market and suspend that license for 2 days, at which time that action became evident to the owners. They had retained an attorney. The attorney had reached out to me in an effort to see if anything could be done to spare the license from being suspended. I said I did not know, and I had called Megan about what had been going on with the fish market. So Megan and I had a back and forth a couple of times during, I guess, the week prior to the 17th of June. And we had come up with this scenario where the health department would do a re-inspection of the fish market on June 17th. They would go over there because the goal for the fish market is to ensure compliance with all the ordinances and regulations. I had communicated that to the fish market's attorney. I think that was communicated to the ownership. And on June 17th, I believe that a re-inspection was performed on the fish market. At which time, I believe when Christie had performed the inspection, she had checked off all the boxes on some of the prior violations, that those were corrected. However, I had heard afterwards from Megan through a phone call that what Christie was unable to do was to observe the fish market while it was serving customers. And that meant that Christie was unable to observe the food handling practices and procedures that the fish market would do when they're serving the public. I communicated that to the fish market's lawyer. And afterwards, Megan and I had been communicating via telephone directly, one-on-one. And I think one of the things that we had developed for your consideration would be to listen to counsel for the fish market this evening, invite them to a special meeting, invite them in after you were informed of all these developments, and try to work something out whereby the license for the fish market is spared, and there is an agreement whereby there would be some re-inspections that would occur, and a failure to any re-inspection would trigger a loss of license. And I think Megan—
On the bed.
Sorry about that. Just to repeat, because I know there was some background noise, that any failure of a re-inspection would trigger a longer or lengthier suspension of the license. I think Megan and I were talking about 5 days if that were to occur. And that period would go on, I think Megan has suggested, for like maybe a year or so. I don't know. That would really be up to you guys as a board on how long you wanted to do that. I think Megan thinks a year would be good, but any failure of a re-inspection would then trigger the loss of the license of pulling, and hopefully that would not happen, and Sheelan's Fish Market would just comply, and that would never occur. So that's really the update with regard to the fish market. I don't know if Megan has anything else to add.
If I may,
Yes.
so I have the, thank you so much, Russ. And thank you to the board members for making the time tonight. So from the last time we met, we had the hearing, and the owners of the fish market were informed that if they received a rating of less than satisfactory on an inspection, they would have their license suspended for 2 days. When we went back in on the 23rd of June, they knew we were coming, right? We called them and we told them that, we would be coming. So in some ways, because it was a re-inspection, it was an announced inspection. When we came in on the 23rd, they did not pass the inspection.
Guys, can I jump in? It's Sean. You guys were just talking about the fish market. I think, Megan, you just jumped to crossing. Remember, we have 3 locations.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm looking at everything at once. I do apologize for that. So hold on one second. So the fish company, that would have been June
8th.
8th. Yes, thank you. Thank you. June 8th is when we went in again, announced, and unfortunately they did not pass. Christie at that time.
Megan, that is incorrect. We passed with satisfactory on June 8th.
No, you didn't.
It was the 17th that you passed with the satisfactory.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good.
So we did inform them that the license closure would be happening, or the suspension of the license per the board hearing. It is my understanding that the restaurant operator, owner operators had requested through their counsel that before the license was actually pulled, that we hold that we hold the action in abeyance, because it's my understanding that through their counsel, they requested a special hearing of the board for reconsideration. The argument that was made to me at the time was that if we went back in for the reinspection and they passed, would the board reconsider, because the goal is compliance. In my communications with Russ and Margaret, ultimately that is up to the board. What happened when we came back in for that reinspection, which would have been on the 17th, I want to be clear, and you can read the report that Christy has done, and Christy's here too, obviously, to give you a firsthand account. It's not just that food preparation wasn't being done and we were unable to observe it. Christy observed the owner operator actually telling patrons that were pulling into the parking lot that the restaurant is closed, we're not ready, come back at 5 p.m. So we were unable to effectively perform an inspection because we didn't see any food preparation. I can tell you that Christy did try to reach me immediately. We were in the middle of interviews for filling Jesse's position, so I wasn't immediately reachable via telephone. And because there was no witnessed violation, Christy did give them a satisfactory, but I do want to be clear. There's a big difference between not witnessing violations and getting a satisfactory than actually ensuring the process is done correctly and getting a satisfactory. They do have the satisfactory rating, but again, that's based on no food prep, and the owner operator, Christy witnessed them telling individuals to come back because they were not open, and here we are.
Megan, may I just make one quick comment to what you said, just to be clear? Food prep for the day was already completed. If you mean food prep for the 3 customers that I did ask to come back, you are correct. This was my first ever experience doing an inspection, and I didn't know there was any difference. Frank handles all this, guys. I never have. That we have a contract, he and I, in place. We're 50-50 partners. He runs the back of the house and I do the front of the house. I do the social media and the marketing. So I thought I was doing the right thing.
But that doesn't explain why you sent people away.
Because why have them
Why would you
interrupt
do
the
that if you're
inspection,
open?
Margaret? That's all I was doing. I didn't want them to interrupt the inspection. Things were getting, that was
Sean,
it.
why don't you let the board members conclude their update, and then when we have an opportunity to speak, we'll clarify the record.
Okay, thank you.
I've got some questions. Can I speak? I've got some questions.
Yes, John.
Okay, thank you. It seems that on June 14th, there was a letter sent from Megan Avalone to Sheelen's Fish Company, and they were notified that on June 8th, it resulted in a conditionally satisfactory rating, the inspection, and failure to close during these license suspension will result in a summons being issued for operating without a license. Okay, so on June the 14th, they were notified that they had to close for 2 days, at which time an attorney, Blick Law, was brought in, I guess. And then on June 16th, they wrote a letter to Megan Avalone, and at this letter, it said they're asking for if a reinspection could be scheduled for the purpose of the inquiry to prove satisfactory. Is this normal that we allow people to tell us when they want to be inspected? Because where I come from, when I used to work, I came from a healthcare setting, and there's no way you would get the opportunity to tell the inspectors when they should come in. I don't understand. Is this normal? That a person can ask, "Oh, we want it on this such and such date." Up to then, 3 times prior, this group had failed, had conditionally satisfactory, conditional satisfactory, conditional satisfactory, 4 inspections with conditional satisfactory. And the only time they passed the inspection, and even that one, if you look at it, there are some, I think, glaring things that occurred that were repeated. Number 14, food contact surfaces properly cleaned and satisfied, a repeated offense. And number 17, cold holding, also a repeated offense, which I'm not a food inspector, but seems to be, I don't know, that in spite of that, they still got a satisfactory rating. So the first question I have is it normal that the board would allow that the Board of Health allows a venue when they bring an attorney in? Do they allow them to schedule? Well, we would like the inspection on such and such date or in this case, June 17th. Is that normal that they would be allowed to pick the date when the inspection is going to be, or is it more like, I thought the idea was a surprise inspection? You should be ready at any time.
Yeah, if I may, John,
Yes.
for the initial inspections, those are always a surprise, unannounced. That's per, the state regulation. So those are always a surprise. We do not schedule them. For the re-inspections, it's not necessarily that we schedule them, but we want to make sure that they're ready in the sense that they've had time to correct the violations. So typically what an establishment will do is call us within the 30 days and say, okay, we're ready. The violations are corrected. Please come back in. We want to make sure we give them enough time, any establishment, enough time to correct the violations. So for re-inspections, in some ways, by default, they are more or less scheduled because the restaurant tells us when they're ready.
May I supplement that? My name is Sean Blick. I'm the attorney that is representing the Sheelan's folks. There is a statutory framework that permits re-inspection. I will just cite to it so that you have it for your record. It's the New Jersey Administrative Code, 8:24-8.11. And that's going to be subsection B2. When there's a conditional satisfaction placard that's issued, and I'm paraphrasing, a re-inspection shall be scheduled, and I quote shall. The re-inspection shall be conducted at a time. Opportunity for re-inspection shall be offered within a reasonable time and shall be determined by the nature of the violation. Just for the record, I want to say that we were not demanding a specific date. Ms. Avalone was courteous in recognizing the fact that the holiday weekend was coming up and we were trying to avoid a closure during a busy time for the business. So I apologize for jumping in, but I wanted to clarify that.
Hi, this is Tanisha. I have a question. Did the establishment ever close? So from the initial, when we had the last meeting and they were unsatisfactory and the determination was the establishment would close for 2 days, did that ever occur?
That did not occur. As soon as they did not pass that inspection that would have triggered the closure, they did send a notice requesting a hold until they can get this special meeting. So I did discuss it with the attorney, Russ Hugel, who's here tonight. And Russ felt as though it made most sense to poll the board to see if the board would consider holding a special hearing and hold the penalty until the hearing could be held, which is why we're here tonight.
Okay.
Were Mr. Flannery And Mr. Blick given any reason to believe that the penalty would be rescinded in the event that they passed a further reinspection?
Not on my end.
Mr. Hugo?
No,
Okay.
it's always a board decision. So,
May I
the-
also, I'm
so-
sorry, go ahead.
I'll let you go. So just to give you a little bit more insight into this, this was sort of when Sean was retained as Sheelen Fish Market attorney, he gave me a call and he said, "Is there anything that we can do to avoid this?" And I said, "Well, in working with Megan, perhaps." And again, this is all up to the board. If there's a reinspection and if there's a satisfactory on that, the board would perhaps take that into consideration. And then there would be no pulling of the license, there would be no suspension. But I think what I added at the time was if there's a failure, if there's less than satisfactory, then obviously we would not be having any further conversation, because then there would be another failure and then it's sort of like there's no compliance then. See, again, when I read the ordinances and all the regulations all together, the goal is compliance for businesses. So you didn't have compliance, but now on the reinspection, again, no promises were made. If there was a satisfactory grade on the reinspection, then it would be brought to you all, and then you guys would decide.
And just
Can I ask a
from-
question now? I'm sorry.
Just from Sheelan's standpoint, I just want to say that I can affirm what Mr. Hugel indicated and Ms. Avalon, that there was no representation to us that this was going to forego any future board action. The only assumptions were based on the statutory scheme that governs this subject matter, that once a satisfactory is issued, it effectively renders it the end of the story. So based on the statutory scheme and the interpretation of that, a satisfactory should render this issue with respect to the fish market to be essentially moot.
Can I ask my question now?
I disagree with that.
So can you
Yes,
review again Megan, where does it stand right now? Is the place in compliance or not?
Well, we had an inspection that did pass, but remember, we didn't see any food prep. So
I understand.
This inspection is useless from a public health
Right.
perspective.
But that inspection occurred after the board voted and decided to close the place for 2
Correct.
days, correct?
That is correct.
And Mr. Blink, what is it that you guys want right now?
We would like to adhere to the statutory scheme, which is that a satisfactory was issued. From what I'm hearing, it seems that there's a lack of confidence in the satisfactory, which I don't know that that's necessarily the case. If the satisfactory-
Just to be clear, it's not that I want to be very clear. I have confidence in my inspection, but my inspector did not witness any activity because the owner operator was actively chasing customers away. So we have to rate on what we see, right? And that violation in itself is interfering with an inspection and is a separate ticket. But the restaurant, the inspection, I do have confidence in because we did not see anything. So I want to be clear on that with the board.
The inspection is incomplete.
But my point is that regardless of whether the inspection was complete or not, it occurred after the board already made its decision and the suspension was already decided on, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And under the statute that Mr. Blink is basically quoting, there's allowed to be a reconsideration pending an inspection, correct, Mr. Blink?
I don't believe that's a statute.
That is the statute that I read. That's the NJAC 824-8.11.
Regulate.
Right.
To be clear, I mean, it does not specifically state that during the pendency of board action and then reinspection, that changes anything per se. But
Okay,
It does, I mean, the fact that the satisfaction was issued, I think it renders it moot. Now, I understand that there may be disagreement amongst the board. But, you know, if you take away the license, if you suspend operations after the satisfactory has been issued, it does become punitive.
It
okay,
should
so
be.
this is my last 2 cents here. As far as I'm concerned, the suspension was correct. The inspections were all correct. And whatever happens after that, regardless of the statute that you're quoting right now, which sounds to me like it's open to interpretation, you can't unring the bell. And that's what you're trying to do here. You're trying to unring a suspension, and you're trying to unring 4 months of repeated violations. And I understand that that's your job, but I don't think that the owners can just hire a lawyer and say, we dispute this, we're going to take this to court. Everything that happened in the last 4 months doesn't count anymore. As far as I'm concerned, the suspension stands. It should continue, and it should have happened when we said it was going to happen. That, you know, there's a separate discussion over whether the inspection that we're talking about was legitimate or not. You know, if my opinion is, if we didn't see if the inspection wasn't done completely to your satisfaction, it probably shouldn't have been rated as completed, right? Or satisfactory.
Incomplete.
But whatever. I mean, at this point, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it changes nothing. We made a decision. The decision should stand. We're talking about a 2-day suspension here. We're not talking about the end of all life on earth. You know, the whole idea is so that the restaurant can get their shit together, get on the right page, and then open again and move on. That's my 2 cents.
This is their livelihood. I understand that 2 days may not seem like much, but, you know, as their livelihood, this is the way that they earn money. And this was a closure that was going to take place on 2 days that they were expecting a good source of business. And by the way,
Until they can,
this is their
until they can
livelihood.
do that
This is
to
their
our
livelihood, but this
satisfaction,
is
they
about-
shouldn't do it.
well, I just want to put one more thing on the record here, and that is that, you know, the notice for this hearing was sent out 3 days ago. My client, Frank Pascal, he's not even in the country at this moment. So he's not even here to enjoy benefit of due process. I've got
Yeah,
Mr.
but you
Flannery
are.
here. I mean, so any board decision, you know, respectfully is void of due process.
Well,
Any
and what
board
you're doing right
decision
now
at
is
this
called,
juncture-
Excuse me?
go ahead.
Any board
Go ahead, Michael.
Any board decision at this juncture would be based off what had previously been decided. And the decision
being
was already in
satisfactory.
place. All this is an appeal.
No, that's not the case, sir. If you look at the way the statutory framework is laid out, that is not the case at all.
I think Dr. Hannah had something to say. He was trying to talk.
Yeah, I mean,
Apologies.
I'm a little concerned about the conversation and mentioning this is their livelihood. I think patient safety is number one for the Board of Health. And being a physician and hearing the conversation about ordinances, no one once talked about public safety and the function of this board. And the attorney, is it Mr. Blink?
It's Blick.
Sorry.
That's
So
okay.
being a physician, I think if you would have started the conversation with maybe a risk management plan or the better, or what they're going to do better next time rather than the ordinances might have resonated a little bit better with the board. But again, I think the board's interest is in the public safety and patient safety.
I have no doubt that that is the case. However, the extreme measure of closure or suspension of licensure is only authorized under certain circumstances under the statutory scheme. There must be a significant and immediate threat to public health. There must be an imminent hazard that exists.
That's
And
actually not
and-
true, Mr. Blick.
Well-
This is a local ordinance, just to be clear to the board. What we're suspending the license, not under the state statute, under our local ordinance. So it's a difference, not because there's an imminent health hazard, because the ordinance says that after a hearing, the Board of Health has that local authority. So it's two different things.
Are you referring to the resolution that was, which ordinance are you referring to? Because frankly, I was looking through it to find it and I couldn't find that.
It's, here, wait, hold on. I'll get it for you. Hold on. I had it called up before when I was talking to Megan and Margaret. Just get it. It's, here it is. It's chapter 354 of the Fanwood Borough Code. That's what the Fanwood, this is the Fanwood Board of Health. That's what they're going under. So it's under that chapter. There's chapter 13, which talks about licensing, subsection C. I think that's where the board is sort of coming from.
The only section in that sanitary regulation of the Fanwood ordinances, which I am familiar with, is
There might have been another one that I didn't cite, but
yeah,
because I'm looking at it,
I
I'm looking at it quickly.
I can tell you definitively, the only section that speaks in terms of closure is section 354-17, which is closure for infection. That's not the situation that we're dealing with here. And I know of no statutory statutory precedent.
No,
or
there's subsection G, Sean. But if you look under licensing, section 13 under that chapter, subsection G, a license may be suspended or revoked for a violation by the holder of any provisions of this article. I think that's what is contemplated. I think that is what they typically go under in these situations. So just to
Yeah, that's correct. To be clear to the board, we're not mandating that the establishment close. We're pulling the license. We can't mandate. Mr. Blick is correct. We cannot mandate a restaurant.
Yeah, no, right.
Close.
It's
All
the
we're
license.
doing is pulling the license. So, and that is clearly allowed under the municipal code that Russ just referenced.
You know, what I heard, Mr. Blick, with all due respect, you basically, a couple minutes ago, you talked about, a closure being an extreme measure, for, very, very serious charges. The implication was that, these charges are not serious, that we're just kind of doing this. We totally agree that closing a restaurant is absolutely an extreme measure. The last time we did this, I can't even remember. We don't do this every day. We don't do this every time we meet. This is not because, as Mr. Dr. Hannah said, this is about keeping the public safe. And I'm really sorry that Frank is out of the country, but you're here, Sean is here. There's a bunch of blame shifting going on here by you, again, with all due respect. All they got to do is come into compliance. We're not talking brain surgery here. They get 2 days, close the place, get the staff on board, and then reopen. I just don't get what's so hard about that, seriously.
There's no blame shifting. I want to be very clear. It's my role here is to defend.
Your role is to win the case. I get it. You're saying
in so many
you
words.
Basically said the charges are the charges are bullshit. You didn't use that word, but I'll say it. You're saying that it's not worthy of closing the restaurant down. And, your client doesn't have due process. He's got a half an owner and he's got you here. I mean, come on, give me a break.
It's okay. I mean, look, I've made a record. I'm not sure what I can say to that other than, yes, it is a significant issue when the possibility of a licensure revocation or suspension is being considered. I would just urge caution in how you review the statutory scheme, because I don't believe that the authority is there on a conditionally satisfactory rating. There has to be imminent danger to the public. Nobody has articulated that. Nobody has set forth imminent danger in any of the inspection reports. So
you're interpreting something. I don't know that you have the qualified to do that. For example, the food, as I recall, we had a situation where the food was not stored at the proper temperature. That could be a cause for serious outbreaks of different kinds of disease. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of that, yes.
Okay, so
How is that not serious?
I'm sorry?
How is that not serious?
Yeah.
I don't think that constitutes an imminent threat.
That's your opinion, sir. That's your opinion.
That's our position.
And as a physician, I take the opposite position.
I concur with Dr. Hannah.
Absolutely. We're the ones who get to decide whether something's a public health threat or not. And I agree.
I do too. There's a very high risk for hepatitis A And if you have someone that's immune compromised, it could kill them.
Especially in the backdrop of COVID.
Yes.
Are we still talking about Sheelan's Fish Market here?
Yes.
That's all we're speaking of right now. Yes.
All right.
Does anybody else on the board have any questions?
So,
I have one more question. It has to do with the letter of June 20th from Russell Hugel to Megan Avalone and others. And one of the things it says in the second paragraph, one of the things the board could do, if they were so inclined, would be to enter into an agreement with Sheelan's, which would provide holding the suspension in abeyance for a period of 180 days. And if there is another failure to pass inspection, escalate the penalties. But if there are no further problems within the 180-day period, then waive the suspension. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. Didn't we already agree that they would be it was a 1 year a look back period, or am I wrong
Yes.
about that?
No,
now
so
we're changing it to 6 months.
So that was on, what was the date of that
That was
email?
June the 20th.
So that was an early idea. I think it kind of, in consultation and back and forth with Megan, when we discussed it, I think Megan said at the outset of this meeting, I think I began, it was a year. So I think there was a back and forth between Megan and I, and Megan felt maybe a year would be a better period. So that's,
A year was the original period.
so anyway, that was just an idea. Everything is subject to the board's approval. It's, you know, I don't have the power to do anything. I'm just sort of giving Megan ideas in terms of a resolution. It's really up to the board in your judgment. It's not my judgment.
Can we make a motion at this time?
Well,
Or is that appropriate or no?
well, what we would do, I'd like to go around first and just check in with everybody to see if they have any other questions. And then if no one else does, then we would close this meeting and then move to the executive meeting, and we would meet privately as a board to discuss further and make a decision.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. So why don't we, Jan, do you have anything you'd like to ask?
No, it's just a comment, and here's where my concern is, because as with Dr. Hannah, I'm in the healthcare industry still. I was a surveyor and I am an RN. And just to lay it on the line, as Tom did so eloquently, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 conditionally satisfactories. And the bottom line with this is that the facility never made any attempt to really do those corrections. And when the 17th came in, they proceeded to tell people not to come in, so that in a way, in my eyes as a surveyor, I see that as impeding the inspection. So
Janet,
that's
may-
my
may-
feeling.
may-
Sure.
Once I learned that I wasn't supposed to do that, Megan, excuse me.
Sean,
Yeah,
end it.
all right.
That's it. That's all I had to say.
About Dr. Hannah, did you have anything else?
I think Janet summed it up very eloquently, but comment to Mr. Blick. Foodborne illnesses are serious concerns for the public. I think making a statement like that can be misleading and appear to be uneducated decision based upon science, facts, and medicine. Thank you.
John, Ashi?
No, I have
Anything
nothing
else?
else to say. Thank you.
Sure. How about Regina?
I think Regina couldn't come on properly, so I think she signed off.
Oh, okay.
She's not there.
Michael Lewis?
No further questions.
Tom?
I've said enough.
About Kathleen?
No questions.
What's that, Kathleen?
No questions.
Couldn't hear you. Tanisha?
No further questions.
I think I got everybody, right?
I believe so.
Sounds like it.
Okay.
Like to
All
make a
right.
motion to go into executive session.
I'm going to ask Colleen first to read the contents of the resolution into the
Okay.
record.
Okay, whereas the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-7 et sec, commonly known as the Sunshine Law, requires that the Board of Health meetings be open to the public except for this discussion of certain subjects. And whereas the Sunshine Law requires that a closed session be authorized by resolution. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Health of the Borough of Fanwood, County of Union, State of New Jersey, that the following portion of this meeting shall be closed to the public, and the meeting shall be resumed at the end of the closed session. Be it further resolved that the subject to be discussed and the time of public release of the minutes of the closed session are indicated below. The subject matter is matters falling within the attorney-client privilege. Time when the circumstances under which the subject matter can be disclosed upon authorization by the borough attorney as required by law.
Thank you, Colleen. And then I'd like a motion from a member to move to the executive session.
Second the motion.
I so
Michael
moved.
first it.
Mhm.
Okay, then we will move into executive session and we will wait until everyone has left and then we can start. Everyone else be